This one positioning mistake is killing your business. And I learned this when I was working on a series that I helped create called Behind Bars Rookie Year. That was the first time I'd ever been in prison, voluntarily or involuntarily. And when I came home after the shoot, which I saw an unbelievable amount of things in the prison, my wife looked at me and she said, "You're a little bit whiter." And I said, "Yeah, I saw some of the craziest things behind bars." It was full of hope, full of despair, full of sadness, full of anger, full of scared, all of the things. And she goes, "Never do that again, Brad." And that's when it hit me. What if people like me went into jail? What would that look like? That authentic experience started the conversation and what eventually became 60 Days In. And that positioning made all of the difference. So this week and the last couple posts, I've shown you why being good keeps you invisible, how to escape the rare versus common trap, and how to turn your weird into your worth. But here's what I've learned after 22 years of positioning television shows in crowded markets. Knowing you're different, it's not enough. You've got to position that difference so the world sees its value. Because the best idea in the world will fail if it's positioned wrong. And a decent idea with brilliant positioning, that becomes impossible to ignore. So today, I'm going to show you the exact positioning strategy that made shows like 60 Days In, Duck Dynasty, and Intervention stand out in saturated markets. And more importantly, how you can use this same strategy to become the obvious choice in your industry. Does that sound good? Does that sound exciting? All right, let's go. Let's first start with Duck Dynasty. The market, when the show came out, was flooded with family reality shows. You had the Kardashians, the Little People, Big World, American Chopper. The list is endless. There were dozens and dozens of them. But Duck Dynasty, we didn't position as just another quirky family show. It was positioned as a movement. Faith, family, freedom. They didn't sell beards and duck calls. They sold values. They sold a way of life that millions of Americans felt was disappearing. The moral clarity made it resonate far beyond Louisiana. People in New York City, San Francisco, and everywhere in between were buying Duck Dynasty merchandise, not because they hunted ducks, but because they believed in what the Robertson family represented. And on a side note, one of the best families I've ever been grateful to know. They really are that awesome. Nearly 12 million viewers were watching that show at its peak. It was one of the cable's biggest hits ever to this day. The lesson: if you stand for something bigger than your product, you become magnetic. All right, let's move on to Intervention. Same thing happened with this series. The market was saturated with addiction shows. There were news specials, talk shows, documentaries, but they all were sanitized. They were polished. They were safe. Well, we positioned Intervention differently. Radical authenticity. No polish, no hiding. The addict's pain was the centerpiece, not something we glossed over. That positioning of pure, raw truth made it an Emmy-winning series that has run for years and changed how culture talks about addiction. Pretty powerful, right? And while other shows tried to make addiction palatable, we made it real. That authenticity became our positioning, and it made that show irreplaceable. Still to this day, no other series profiles addiction like Intervention does. And I'm so proud to have overseen that show for over 12 years. And let's take another one that I didn't mention earlier, but it's near and dear to my heart: accused, guilty, or innocent. And if you haven't watched the show, watch it. One of the best shows I've ever been a part of. So true crime, very much a saturated genre. You're probably watching it. And when you flip on the TV, you see a lot of it. Hundreds of shows. And some even covering the same ground, the same cases. That's how saturated it is. But instead of positioning it from the prosecutor's perspective, or both the defense and the prosecutor's perspective, like everyone else, we flipped the lens. We told the story from the accused perspective, the challenged assumptions, forced empathy. It was the only way that an audience could potentially be on that show. That show, Accused, Guilty, or Innocent, what if you're accused of a crime you say you didn't commit? That could be anyone. So we focused on the anyone. We focused on you potentially being in that seat. Completely different angle. And that positioning made it fresh in a category where almost every show blurs together. That lesson: you don't always need a new category. You need a new angle that makes people lean forward. I learned this lesson personally when I left the day-to-day of corporate television. I could have positioned myself, and I sort of did at the beginning, as another business consultant helping entrepreneurs. Instead, I positioned myself as the TV producer who helps experts become unforgettable. Same skills, same goal of helping people grow their businesses. But that positioning made me the only TV producer doing personal branding instead of 10,000 generic consultants. That positioning changes everything, right? Because positioning isn't about what you do. It's about how people see what you do. Let me say that again. Positioning isn't about what you do. It's about how people see what you do. So, how do you create positioning that makes you impossible to ignore? It's the exact question you're asking. So I created a framework because that's what you do now. A repeatable process that makes it easy for you to understand. And frankly, for me to help you understand. And I'm going to call it the pilot framework, Pilot. And just like a TV pilot sets the tone for an entire series, your positioning pilots how the world sees your brand. Let's start with P. Place yourself where others aren't. Don't try to compete in incredibly crowded spaces. Find the white space within that crowded space. 60 Days In didn't compete with prison documentaries. It created a social experiment category within the genre of prison shows. Identify your audience's worldview. Incredibly important to know your audience. What does your ideal client, your dream customer, already believe in? Duck Dynasty and the Robertson family, they understood their audience, and we understood the A&E audience valued faith, family, and freedom. So the show was positioned as the champions of those values, and I know that you see it if you watch an episode. So we got the P, we got the I, we got now the I. Lead with what you stand for. Don't just sell features of your product or sell beliefs. Intervention stood for radical honesty about addiction. And that belief system became the brand. Do the same. Own a clear category. Be the only one that does what you do, the way you do it. Be the only one who does what you do the way you do it. Again, I'm not a business consultant, right? I'm the TV producer who helps experts become unforgettable. And T, tell it consistently everywhere. Your positioning has to be consistent across every touch point. So consistent that your audience is repeating your positioning back to you. Every piece of content, every conversation, every interaction should reinforce your position. This isn't just marketing. This is strategic positioning that makes you the obvious choice. The one the first name that comes up in anyone's mind when they need your expertise. Be that person. You got to be consistent. In today's noisy world, being different, it's not enough. You have to position that difference so people immediately understand why it matters to them. 60 Days In could have been another prison show. Instead, it became a cultural phenomenon. Duck Dynasty could have been another family reality show. Instead, it became a movement, an incredible movement that stood for years. Your business can be another option in a crowded market, or it can be the obvious choice for the right people. The difference? Positioning. So if you're ready to discover your unique positioning and turn it into a strategy that helps and makes you impossible to ignore, I'd love to help. I created this GPT. It's called the Vibe Finder GPT, a free tool that helps you identify what makes you uniquely valuable and shows you how to position it strategically. But more than that, if you're serious about becoming the $2 bill in your industry, I work with a select group of entrepreneurs to develop their complete positioning strategy. I've got incredible testimonials. It's so much fun to work with you one-on-one. Reach out to me. When you sign up for the Vibe Finder GPT, there'll be information about my services. Here's what I've learned. The right positioning doesn't just get you noticed. It gets you chosen. I'm living proof of that. So start with the Vibe Finder GPT. Do it now. Reach out to me. I'd love to hear the results and see if it's working for you. And I want you to stop competing on features. I want you to start competing on your positioning. Tomorrow, I'm going to show you how to put it all together. We're going to take everything from the last few posts. Being unforgettable instead of good, staying rare instead of common, turning your weird into your worth, and positioning you so you are impossible to ignore. And all of that for you to become the $2 bill in your industry. The culmination of everything we've covered, and I'll give you the complete roadmap to transform from just another option to the obvious choice. See you tomorrow for the final piece of the puzzle. And always be unforgettable. Be the $2 bill.